Hello, everybody.
Hello, Jesse.
Hi.
Hey, it's good to see y'all. It's good to
And
see people.
Nice to see you.
It is nice to see people. Hey, Andy, are you going to share the documents or should I? It's thundering out here, so I don't know. I'm on my phone. I don't know how well my
And yes,
internet.
I can share the agenda.
Yeah, and I think I sent everything out really late, so we might want to put the minutes up first. The first thing we're going to do is approve the minutes, and I don't know if people have had a chance to look at them. Maybe you want to just throw those up real quick.
Yep, I'll get them queued up. You just let me know when you want them presented and or shared and then unshared.
Okay, great. Thanks. Jesse, I know we were going to invite Terry. Did you extend that invitation for today?
I tried. Andy, did we?
Yes, that was, she received it. I heard back from her that she did receive the meeting invite.
Okay, great. Thank you all very much for that. Well, I think we're good to start. Teddy told me that she didn't think she'd be able to make it. She's got something for work. We have kind of a low turnout today. Maybe we need another minute. We just got an email from Liz, so she's probably going to join us.
I may have to leave a little early. My daughter and her family are in the midst of moving into my house right now. And so I want to get as much of this done as I can, but I also have another meeting tonight. I may have to step back.
Understandable. There's Liz. Okay.
I'm here.
Good. So we'll just take a quick roll call on Peggy. So you have me and Serena and Andy and Christine and Liz and Donna, Jesse, Margaret, yourself, and then we have the public input website. Apologize, guys, that's my dog. And I have not heard from Tom or Navarre about their participation, so I'm not certain if they'll be joining us in a bit. Teddy did write to me and said that she thought she would not be able to make it, so I think you can put her down as absent. So welcome, everybody. It's nice to actually see everybody. I apologize for sending things out so late today for you. It's just been a little crazy, which I keep thinking I'll have time, and then I still don't have time. Andy, if you could throw the minutes up. I don't know if you all have had a chance to look at them. We did not. They're very short, and if you can just scroll through them. The first thing I'd like to do is just approve the minutes from our last meeting last month. There's not too much there.
Right. Just, I lost track of who was here. Do we have a quorum to, because Donna and I can't vote on it. Whoops.
Let's see. We have Jesse, me, Margaret, Peggy, Christine.
Yeah.
5.
Yep, you got it.
Yep.
Yeah, so I make a motion that we approve the May minutes as submitted.
Second.
Great. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody who doesn't approve them, say nay. All right, they are approved. Thank you all very much. All right, and thank you, Peggy, for putting those together.
Happy to do it.
So we go to the agenda, and Andy, if I could ask you to just pull that up for us. A lot of the old business items are things that are just on hold due to COVID. So nothing has changed there. Phil is not on today, and I know he had mentioned he was going to share the quarterly tonnage information. I feel like maybe he sent that. Does anybody recall if that happened or not?
I'm here.
Oh, hey, Phil, welcome.
I sent it during the last meeting.
Okay, I thought so. Okay, so that's done. We've got it. Sorry about that. So we'll put that as completed. I haven't had a chance to look at that. So can we put as an action item, I'd like to follow up with, Lance and to figure out, how we might, report or list these on the website.
Mhm.
I think that would be really great.
Yep.
And then I just have this other one on the Devil's Backbone follow-up. That was just no word. That was just kind of on hold. Is there any follow-up on that, Phil?
Yeah, I have to fess up. I totally forgot about it. I just emailed her today.
Okay.
And thank you for putting it on the thing, or I would have forgotten it yet for another month.
That's why we do it. All right, great. Thank you. Okay, so that's all I had for old business. I took off some other things that we had acted on last meeting. So I think we can move right into the Outreach and Communication Subcommittee. So I apologize. I scheduled a meeting for the subcommittee, asked everybody to go, and then at the last minute, I couldn't go. I had a client issue come up. But I understand you all met, so I was wondering if I could ask you all to report out on what happened.
Well, I think that I had a lot of questions for Phil during that meeting because in preparation for the Master Gardeners presentation, and then we did talk a little bit about the ambassadors program and how to what sort of protocol that we could need to get put in place, and the possibility of just going and doing a run through over there. And then Phil, I think you were talking about putting together some of the training pieces of that, perhaps like a slideshow for it.
Yes, I have training done and an agreement done, and I'm just want one of our folks to look at the agreement to see if it seems adequate. But yeah, it's quick. It's I think 9 pages. It's quick training, and the agreement's like a 1-pager.
Okay.
Do you want to do like a dry run on training some of us or something and see how it goes?
Yeah, why don't I do this like tomorrow or as early as tomorrow? I'll just email what it is. I'll email both documents out to the group, and you look at it and tell me if it seems adequate or reasonable or the tone is right, as importantly.
Okay. Absolutely. That sounds great. Well, thank you all very much for doing that. And I will tell you just from talking to people and doing this presentation with Piedmont Master Gardeners, there's a lot of interest in it. So I think that, once we get it together, I think we will be able to get volunteers. So I'll move on to reporting out on the Master Gardeners presentation. So huge thank you to Christine, who did a lot of work putting together a presentation for a pretty demanding group. They had some really firm ideas of what they wanted to present. And, at first it was supposed to be kind of low-key, high-level, and then they wanted more and more and more. And it was quite a bit of work for us to put it together. I shared out the deck with you all, and thank you, Phil, for your comments on it. I think now we have a a basic deck that has a lot of information on composting, a lot of information on recycling that we could break up or, put together in various ways to support education and outreach events. I wouldn't recommend that we do this one in particular again because it's really detailed and long, but I think it's all really good information, lots of resources linked to it. Thank you, Andy, for putting this up. This is the letter that Susan Seidler, who is the co-chair of Master Gardeners, wrote thanking us for doing it, and I just thought it was really nice kind of confirmation and wanted to share that. So we got lots of questions. People were pretty engaged. We got an interesting comment that somebody said, we're older people. This is too detailed for us, which I thought was kind of an interesting comment. They said, you need to make it higher level. So I think that's probably good feedback that we do perhaps need to simplify some of it. But that was a little bit in conflict with the charge that Susan had given us. So I think I'm going to take another look at it and think about that comment. Anyhow, I think it went very well, and thanks to Christine who did much of the heavy lifting on that.
Well, I think it was, and all your expertise that you were able to bring to it. And I think that it was great, and it just gave some framework for how things get recycled and the whole infrastructure for waste management, which I don't think most people understand.
Yeah, for sure.
I just want to really quickly insert, I haven't read the whole slide presentation because, as you say, it's got a lot of information in it, but what I did read was really good, and just want to say thank you very much. And after I read it through thoroughly, I'm assuming that this will go into the board packet or be sent out to the whole board at some point, but we need to share it with them. And I can do that, or we can do it in some other form. But I just want to mention that it's quite a lot of work. It's very clear. So thank you.
That it was. But I think what I'm happy about is, and I just want to thank Phil, he's reviewed it and made some recommendations. There's a couple of, before we share it with the whole board, Liz, there's a couple of comments that Phil made that I want to make a couple of clarifications on it. But I think having this in our back pocket now, that not having to craft something from scratch is a huge advantage. And, so if an organization asks us to do this again, or if, we want to do some sort of outreach to the libraries, I feel like we're in a great shape to do it. So that was, I think, a big accomplishment last month. I didn't mean to keep the update on the International Composting Awareness Week. That was last month, so that should be struck. I do think, we have this ambassadors program, which I think is our priority to get this together and kind of roll out. And Phil, we need to talk about, how COVID is going to potentially impact this and our ability to roll it out. Liz, I just reviewed your survey. I saw where recycling came up on that survey. So I don't know whether, my idea for some sort of citizen survey is really to gather local perspectives on recycling. Not about necessarily our recycling services, but a bit more broadly about how well educated they are, how well informed they are. So we have sort of some sense of really what's going on. So that's something that, I think I'd like to have a meeting and sort of talk through what we might want to, how we might want to frame an annual citizen survey on recycling. And that's it. Do any other committee members have things that they want to share?
Nothing for me. I think we covered it.
Okay. Jesse, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. So I had two things I was supposed to do this month. I achieved one of them. I said that I would invite Terry Kent, who is on the phone on the Zoom call, because I think she would make an excellent member of our future, of our solid waste committee. And I wanted to introduce her to everybody who hasn't met her already.
Hi, Terry.
Glad
You get to
be
look
back.
at that head. Nice to meet you.
The other thing, it was to schedule a call, which I failed to do. So we did not have a meeting this month. I would propose this. The thing we were working on was visualization of waste data so that we could share with our community what's happening with solid waste. Phil gave us the quarterly data last time. Do y'all remember Jeffrey Justice, the intern who worked with me last summer?
Yeah.
He's coming back Monday. So I would propose this. I'll work with him to create like a sketch, a straw man that we can look at via Zoom. And then maybe we have a meeting on Friday of next week to look at this straw man, if you will. Would that work for Phil, Tom, Liz? I'm trying to see who else is actually on the call. Lance, if you're interested.
Yeah, it works for Tom.
Okay, I'll schedule something for Friday of next week to review a potential visualization of waste data. We will look at the Bridge to Circularity report as a start, and I will ask Jeffrey to help me.
Awesome. That sounds great, Jesse.
I just have one suggestion. I'm looking at my calendar. If you could make it in the afternoon, it would be very helpful to me.
Sure, what time?
Really, anything after 1 would work
Okay.
for me. Okay.
I'm gonna shoot for 1 unless I hear otherwise.
Okay.
Peggy, did you catch all of that?
Yeah.
Sounds like a bunch of action items there. Okay, great. Thanks. All right. That sounds awesome.
So I think that's the extent of our update.
All right,
Unless
but that's
Phil
great.
or Lance would like to share anything that's going on.
Hey, everybody, it's Lance. Sorry, I was a few minutes late. I had another virtual meeting run long because the virtual meeting before that ran long. The story of my life these days. I know there was a question even as much earlier this week about whether this would be a virtual meeting or not. Sorry, we weren't a little further out in advance of that, but just so you know, we're not expecting to necessarily have people, like the general public or even, members of committees in the county office building for some time yet, probably until phase 3 is announced, and maybe not necessarily the day the governor's phase 3 is announced. So I think we could certainly anticipate that it's 90% that next month's meeting will be virtual as well.
Oh, good. Okay, that's helpful to know in advance. All right. So let's shift to the Planning and Vision Subcommittee section of the agenda. Andy, and if Teddy, you're not on, right? She's still not on. So I don't know. Peggy, has anything happened?
No, we didn't meet this month. Teddy was absent the last meeting, and we communicated a little bit online, but we didn't connect to have a meeting. We did talk with Navarre about joining the committee and sent him the application.
Great. Yes, because I want to actually talk about that in the next section. I would like, I know there has been a fair number of sort of policy things going on in the state, and I don't know in terms of the county if much is happening right now for planning and vision. I know you all had mentioned that the turf discussion was is on indefinite hold, and but I'm just wondering if I think it would be helpful to get a bit of a summary of what is happening in the state that would be of interest to the county.
Yeah.
And mostly I'm getting, part of that is that Teddy today sent me something about a plastic waste advisory committee,
Yes.
which I actually applied for,
Oh, good.
which is a governor's advisory committee. Interestingly, that the last vetting question is, they don't want people who have any professional relationship to the topic. And I just kind of looked at that one and I said, so does this mean it disqualifies me because I have experience? I have no idea. But it was very odd. So we'll see what happens with that. But I think, if we can capture some of those things that are going on in the state, it would be really interesting and helpful for us. I know that there is quite a lot going on with the glass industry. They have funded a pretty big initiative in Eastern Virginia, and I can try to get the name of that. But, there are dollars flowing for different recycling programs, and I think it'd be helpful for us to understand some of what's going on and see if we can tap into any of this stuff.
Right. Okay. I'll put an action item to ensure that Teddy and I meet and do some work on what the changes are to policy and whether there are things that we could use in Albemarle County, either for funding or for putting restrictions on products or disposal of products to landfill or whatever, things like that there are.
Okay. I think part of it, what I've been hearing is, so there's this market development initiative. I keep thinking Jamestown. It's not Jamestown. I don't know if it's James something or other, Virginia. And it's a big recycling market development initiative. And, I think that's something that would be really interesting for us to understand what's going on. And, would that be a positive thing for us if there's more end market development going on?
Mhm.
And just to have our ear to the ground on that particular issue would be helpful.
Right. And I don't know if any of you are following this issue. I think it's topical of the Pine Grove School, the Rosenwald School in, which county is it? The one that County Waste wants to build their new mega landfill next door to. It's been designated a historic landmark, and the people of the community are trying to save it and prevent the county waste landfill from being sited right next to it, where they'll be subjected to a lot of pollution and smells, et cetera. And it's typical move, of course, to site a mega landfill in a community that's maybe minority, rural, less well-heeled, less able to fight to prevent the establishment of something like that in their neighborhood.
No, I had not heard that.
So I'll send you something. I'll send around a story about the Pine Grove School. UVA's Law Center is working with them to help them, and NPR did a story on it recently.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, County Waste in Virginia is now GFL, and GFL is a Canadian company, and they are growing really quickly. So it sounds like they don't plan on changing their operating name in Virginia, but I think all the Virginia assets are now owned by GFL.
So is that landfill still in play? For some reason, I was thinking that the local government there turned it down.
No, they approved it, but there's a lot of community resistance. The reason they approved it was because of the tax revenue.
Yeah, okay, now I remember.
Mhm.
It's in Cumberland County.
Thank you, Margaret. Yeah. I wasn't planning to talk about it, but it's just been on my mind lately.
Well, I mean, I think it's, environmental justice is pretty topical right now.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks for that, Peggy. Okay, well, if there's nothing else on the Planning and Vision Committee, let's move to governance and administration. And Lance and Andy, this is your time. Any updates for us from you all?
I got a couple of relevant things. One I'll talk about briefly, and another I'll ask Andy to. We staff are going to the Board of Supervisors for the first time and since last fall to talk about the Climate Action Plan. So we're really excited about having that opportunity. It's a full 1 hour work session. I think it's scheduled to start at 2:45, and there will be, the public Zoom opportunities if you wanted to watch it, and replayable through our usual very grainy system called Granicus. So we're excited to have the chance to kind of lay out how it's structured generally. We've gotten a lot of really great input through a couple of engagement surveys generally, including some, specific feedback with open-ended text questions and in general, on a scale of, on a sliding scale, how well do you feel each of the sectors, meets your vision for the community. So that, so we've got some data specifically on the materials management section that we should be in a position to share. All of that is actually on the same site that you all got a link to earlier today. That is shareable by the public. It's to the public where they can watch live or they can watch it recorded. So there's a specific page for the climate action plan there that's got those the full text of the survey and the rough data for each of the answers to the questions that we asked. So you could feel free to do your data mining. One of our staff folks is taking the really granular data and kind of tried to break it out in other ways. So interested to see how that goes. So we hope that goes well. We get great input from the board members. We've certainly got some good ideas from the public and from advocacy groups or environmental groups that are like highly detailed in terms of their recommendation input. Some of it's been very valuable. And of course, we all are learning lessons about reduced vehicle miles traveled and, these times and teleworking and so there is fresh thought going into that as well. So we do expect that there'll be, there'll be plenty to work on for our final draft, but our aim is to come back to the board with a final draft 2 months after this meeting. So presuming there's no major redirect on what we've created so far. So it's a great opportunity, I think, for you all to consider your own perspective and using that as a springboard and then start to gear up. Some of you, like Jesse, for instance, maybe for some increased participation as we move into phase 2, where we really get into implementation mode for the recommended actions. So I think there's plenty more to come on that front. And one of the recommendations is to basically do some survey. We've talked about this before, but survey of the community, best practices look. So Andy we've talked in the past about Charlottesville's effort on their landfill diversion study. GBB and Charlottesville have gotten off to a much slower start than they anticipated, and COVID didn't help. So they're rearranging their communications plan for that, but getting ready to kick off pretty soon. And Andy's been working with GBB to get to finalize a proposal to us. So Andy, would you mind just talking about that for a minute?
Right. So they've, like Lance said, have been off to a slow start, retooling for life in the virtual world. So we do have kind of a revised proposal. I think it's pretty spot on, kind of taking it in phases so that, you know, we can move incrementally forward and adjust if and when needed. And so a lot of it is, you know, that gap analysis and best practices across Commonwealth and even innovative practices from other states that might be able to work here. A lot of it will be, you know, what we have the authority to do as well. So GBV is super excited about the project. So we're super excited about it. So looking forward to it getting underway. Like I said, it's a little bit slower than anticipated. So probably more like a full summer moving into fall process.
Okay. Yeah, everything is taking so much longer. Thanks for that, Andy. Lance, I have a question. Just a comment I wanted to share with you based on the presentation that Christine and I did and some of the feedback we got, which I think aligns really nicely with the Climate Action Plan, which consistently one of the pieces of feedback we got was that people were completely unaware that most of the climate impact associated with a product or package was due to upstream impacts. And, you know, so we were emphasizing that your choices about consumption, you know, it really starts, you know, when you make that decision about consumption. And that's why, you know, eliminating or reducing are so important. And I mean, I got like a half dozen emails saying, I had no idea. And so I think that bit of education around sustainable materials management, I think that term is a little complicated for people, but I think teaching that those concepts was really it resonated with people. It was really new information from them. We used an example of food, but I think we could put also some examples of products in there, and that we showed them by the time, you know, you're actually managing materials, you know, all the climate impact or the majority of the climate impact has already happened, and we're just sort of managing a very small amount of it. So I just wanted to share that because I think that the outreach that we do could just connect really, really nicely with that Climate Action Plan.
I just want to throw something in there. Thank you for saying that, Ann. That's one of the things that I've actually been thinking about as a comment to staff and to Lance about the solid waste, is it is one of the best places in the Climate Action Plan to really discuss the circular economy, I think. You know, because transportation gets so much attention, and not that it shouldn't, but when we're talking about resources and where we're going to put them, that, you know, and we're weighing what has the most impact, solid waste seems to always kind of be pushed down a little bit in the hierarchy. And I do think it's amazing to me, Anne, that so many people don't know that most of the problem is in making the product, but you've it really, the whole subject lends itself really well to discussing, you know,
Right.
discussing.
I hope people are understanding that if you don't recycle or make, you know, continue to reuse those materials, someone's going to go out and mine it or cut down more trees and start the whole process over again from scratch. And that's where all the emissions and pollution are created.
Yep.
And the environmental degradation.
And I
Mhm.
think people think that if you recycle it, you're good. Like you've done your job, you've done the right thing, so you're kind of off the hook for it all.
Yeah, so we actually have a bit in there that talks a bit about that, and this is actually, there's more and more research about that recycling is seen as it's actually enabling more consumption because people feel like they're taking the right action, and it's sort of a counterbalance to their consumption. So it's sort of a take on Javon's paradox, that the more efficient we get, the more impact we have, because that's sort of in the minds of consumers, and the state of Oregon has documented this actually pretty well, and that's where we have to really be careful about talking about where the biggest opportunities are. And so we put in a different sort of form of the waste hierarchy, one that's from the World Resources Institute, that's really around the circular economy, talking about repurposing, remanufacturing, and recycling ends up being the bottom of the hierarchy because, you want all of these other opportunities to either don't consume or eliminate before you actually get down to recycling. And it compares it with the traditional waste hierarchy. So I think that's I think we have to make it very accessible, and that's where, we have to make sure we come out in the right spot there for the public. But I think that's a really important area for education that this committee can work on. Okay, well, let's move to the next topic, and thank you, Lance and Andy. Really appreciate you pushing those things forward and thinking about us and how we can support that. So we have an open seat on open seats on this committee, and I would really like to have them filled. We have two people who have submitted applications. Navarre, yay! And I'm not entirely certain what the process is, but I would really like to go ahead and nominate Navarre for a SWAAC position. If it, Andy, can we go ahead and do that on a call? Like, what's the formal process? If we have a quorum, can we do it in this call?
The way it's been done in the past is there's kind of two processes here. The SWAAC voting, that member on, and also the Board of Supervisors appointing through the application process of, and I'm pretty sure that this board had voted that, they wanted the people before the person submits application to the Board of Supervisors, and that's a web link.
But I think both Navarre and Amy have done that. They've submitted online applications.
I haven't actually done the application process yet. Peggy sent me the link, but I haven't had a chance to put it in yet. So
All right, Navarre, you got to get on the stick, man.
I typically only know once the Board of Supervisors has appointed and Claudette or Travis is sending the letter around to the person saying that, yes, you've been appointed to this committee.
I can check in just a minute. I get out my other computer and check to see if there are other applications in our board packet, because our board packet just came out. And what happens each time we get applications as they come in. So every couple of weeks when we have a board meeting, the board will, we'll look at those applications and approve it. Absolutely, if the SWAAC committee is suggesting a particular person, traditionally, that's how we would, go ahead and appoint them, unless some supervisor has some issue with Navarre, which I'm sure they don't. but that's typically how we do it. So with a recommendation from the committee for whomever is a good thing.
And can I add that I talked to Amy Locker, by email, and she said that I'm pretty sure she sent in her application, but she said she was not appointed, but she was appointed to another committee. And it sounds like she wanted to join today, but I didn't. I just sent her.
She got appointed to the Social Services Board for that district. Bela Pisto Kirtley appointed her for that position. I didn't know if she wanted to be on both committees. I think my understanding was that she preferred, that was her one that she really wanted, and we put her on that. So I'm not totally sure what the interest is at this point. I have no idea.
Okay.
So I knew she put her application in the fall when we did not have an open position. And that's when we started the conversation around expanding the SWAC. And now we're set, and now we're down a person. So what I'd like to do is I would like to formally nominate Navar and make this recommendation to the Board of Supervisors that when his application is in, that they would approve him for the SWAC. Is there somebody who would
Second that, Peggy.
Thank you? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anybody
Aye.
opposed? Okay, so we have a recommendation for Navar to the Board of Supervisors for the SWAC position. And then, Christine, do you have any insight from Amy about, does she want to be on two committees, or do you have any idea?
I'll check back in with her. In her email, she says, I wasn't appointed to the SWAC committee. I was appointed to this other committee. But she sounds like I will dig a little bit further and see if she still has that interest.
Okay.
And if
All
she
right.
does, should I ask her to, what should I tell her to do?
Well, wait a minute. Can we just ask, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I guess I should keep my mouth shut because I'm a board member. I just want to make sure that we find out if Terry is interested.
I was gonna ask Terry that next. So let's just make the action item. Christine will follow up with Amy and find out if she's interested in a SWAC position, and if so, we're gonna move that forward quickly. But then, Terry, you're on this call. We would be interested in knowing if you have interest in, being on the SWAC.
Absolutely, yeah. I had served on when it was first chartered, so it's been, like 4 years, some crazy thing. Maybe Phil or Jesse could jog my memory, or Liz. But yeah, I'd love to get back in. I have a passion around this. Right now I'm serving for the nonprofit, the Community Climate Collaborative. And then I have still running my on a volunteer basis, Better World Betty. So still staying very connected to the community when it comes to consumer education around recycling and sustainable packaging and all that good stuff. So I give presentations or a talk probably once a quarter to kids or anybody who asks. So I'm very interested in this topic and would love to join.
Great. Well, I'd like to do the same thing we did with Navar, and go ahead and nominate Terry, and then as a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors for the SWAC, could I have I guess that's my motion.
And second that nomination of Terry.
Thanks.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Great. So
And I
Terry
just-
can.
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
I just wanted to say I did check our applications folder for this next week's Wednesday meeting, and there's nothing in there for any SWAC related appointments.
Okay. So I would like Terry and Navar to get their applications in as soon as possible. So if you look at the Zoom, Andy has posted it for you all. You should be able to just click there to to do the application. That is excellent. Okay, great. Is there anything else anybody wants to talk about? Anything new in your world, Phil? Doesn't sound like it. Okay.
So a head shake.
Oh, sorry.
Right before the meeting started, I sent out the survey that the county did that has some recycling questions. And you can see that all. I don't need to tell you what it said, and I haven't gone through the whole survey yet either. But there's a short version of our presentation that mentions recycling, which of course the comments are that people don't think we do enough. But I don't think it came up on the priority list of things that the public wants us to do or wants us to spend money on. But I'm not completely sure about how that priority list worked because I haven't gone through the whole survey yet. And the other thing I just wanted to mention is that on the county waste versus GFL, I'm curious because the trucks that I have seen around here that are county waste trucks all have the county waste removed, the logos and the words removed and painted over. So I'm just curious if they are really keeping the county waste name or not. I just don't know. I'm just reacting to the trucks I've seen. So I just want to say that.
Well, I know the acquisition. I think GFL acquired all the assets in Virginia. So the county waste still has operations outside of Virginia, but GFL, acquired the assets in Virginia. I have no idea. So I think the fact that they're changing the names on the trucks suggests to me that they are transitioning. So what I'm wondering is if the application for that landfill originally happened under county waste, and so they have to keep it under county waste, but behind the scenes it's a GFL, action.
No, yeah.
I'd have to dig into that. So that's interesting. All right, well, y'all, I don't have anything else for you. I would like to urge our subcommittees to meet. I know it's really hard with, sort of life in suspended animation. But I do think there's a lot we can do, even, virtually have these meetings and try to push some of these things forward as much as possible. And Jesse, I think, getting an example of how we could display information is really outstanding. So I'm really looking forward to that. And Peggy, if you can just prod Teddy a little bit about, thinking what we can push forward on the policy and vision group, that would be helpful. And I know she's got a bunch of things that she's got percolating. And then I know, Lance, this climate action, I'm just wondering if there's a particular action item you want us to study or take action on before the next call. Is there something specific that would be helpful for you from us?
I don't think so. We missed our opportunity, staff did, to have a part of this, of what we'll be talking about on Wednesday, which was to talk about, how the plan is structured and what the intent was for how we talked about things, and just a general overview for the board and for the public about the the sectors and what's in them, and it's kind of like a how to read the plan, and we'll be asking for input on similar to, in some ways, to how we ask the communities to respond, which is how does this how do these different elements reflect what you expect, how does it position us to move forward. All that is to say, we're really not intending at this meeting to get down into the weeds of walking through the I can't remember how many 150 plus individual actions. So So there may well be people, members from the public can now participate as they did before with comments that advocate for changes or to really highlight some specific things. I'd say that that in between and potentially directly to board members or at the final adoption may be a time to really push one concern over another, at least from a staff perspective. Bearing in mind that even when we adopt the plan, it's not like the county isn't going to consider new opportunities and new strategies and changing marketplaces in terms of where our effort goes. So there's really no end date to when input and great ideas and support are helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound like a reasonable answer? I'm kind of exhausted right now, honestly.
No worries. No, that's fine. So two things I have is, one is for you, Phil. I'm thinking about, having 2 graduates this spring. I have the polypropylene yard sign that congratulated your graduate. And I was wondering, as we are entering into election season, are we going to be able to do election sign recycling again?
Well, we can do the paper and we can do the poly bag. We collected I'll call them corrugated, what are they, number 5 plastic rigid signs last year. And we did that in a bin that we bought forward from the new convenience center. And whoever was supposed to, I guess, buy a new one or put in the budget for a new one, and somehow that never happened. So the bin is going away, needless to say. So unless we have some other place to collect it, I don't know of a good place to put those rigid signs.
Is what you need is a bin?
A roll-off container, yeah.
And how much does that cost?
$7,000.
So if somebody sponsored that roll-off, could we do it?
Sure.
Okay. So could you put that down as an action item, Peggy?
Yeah.
Because I think we can work on that.
We did bail the ones we have. It bails well. Now we have to figure out what to do with them. But they can sit outside for a while.
There's some polypropylene. The value of polypropylene is just plummeted. But I do know of some end markets we should talk to.
Okay.
So I think as another action item, Peggy, I'm going to invite Scott DeFife from the Glass Packaging Institute to either next month or the month after to speak to us about his circular glass initiative in Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is part of what they're doing. They have that Purple Bell program up in Alexandria, and they're really trying to work on, local end markets for glass within Virginia and to drive much more collection of glass in the region for the 2 glass plants that are around here. So I think because our agendas, aren't super heavy, I think, as a guest speaker, he might be interesting.
Yeah.
I know he would like to convene the wine industry here in Charlottesville.
Mm-hmm.
I think he wants to do that as an in-person meeting, but I think it'd be good for him to meet everybody.
Okay.
I still remember what Randy Lehman told us when he was on the committee, that he was a trash hauler for many, many years, and that Albemarle County produces more wine bottles than any other area he's ever heard of before, that we're very heavy wine drinkers here. So anyway.
Well, I
That's
have to tell you
that's
that
always one of the most fun things that McIntyre Recycling is seeing what your neighbors drink.
Well, I can tell you COVID, I'm afraid that one of the byproducts of COVID is going to be, liver problems because we track the stats of all of this stuff. We've seen huge consumption increase in alcohol over the last 100 days. So, yeah, I can imagine. All right, guys. Well, I think that's all we have. So unless anybody has something else.
Great.
And I had raised my hand, and this is off of our committee, but I just want to mention to everyone, because I'm sure you have seen the communications from many people with regard to what's happening around the country right now after George Floyd's death, and the supervisors have received a lot of communications with regard to law enforcement tactics and the chokehold, the school resource officers, the funding of law enforcement. We've also been getting a lot of inquiries with regard to the statue at the courthouse square. And I just want everyone to know that the Board of Supervisors is taking all of these matters into consideration. We are going to be announcing at our next meeting next week some processes. And with regard specifically to the statue at Courthouse Square, state law requires that no action can be taken before July 1st. And then there's a series of steps that have to be taken before anything can be done if the county were to decide to take any action with regard to the statue there. And I just want everyone in the community to know that we are going to go through that process. The outcome, of course, will be to be determined, but I do not want our residents to think that the county is not actively going to go through that process. So please, when you have an opportunity, let your friends and neighbors know that we are, in fact, going to work our way through that process.
Good.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Donna. All right. And with that.
Small thing.
Oh, go ahead.
Since we've got two supervisors on the call that have campaigned, what would be the best outreach or communication to let candidates know that there are alternatives to, there's a pressed cardboard alternatives to the signage? And I ask because there's a lot of signage period going on right now with businesses, nonprofits, and of course the candidates. But what would, any advice on how to get the word out about the alternative and the fact that we don't need to use the PVC or the number 5?
I would be making
recommend reaching out to the
regular
parties
announcement.
first.
Right. Yeah. Yes. And
I would-
Well, Liz, can you go first?
I'm just, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I would actually make announcements. I mean, we're more familiar with, I am more familiar with the Democratic Party, of course. So I would make regular announcements and ask the chair if you can make an announcement at the meeting, which is actually pretty easy now because they're all on Zoom. And, but a request from the chair to put that out. And Terry, if you're going to do that, if you don't already have the contact information, I can get you that.
And I would,
but yeah,
to reach out
that's
to
what I would do.
the
And the
political
Republican
parties.
Party, I don't know how well organized.
Donna, go ahead.
I would say reach out to the political parties, the Democratic and Republican parties for the county, and other counties or the district, however you want to do it, because they will be meeting with each of the candidates who are running under those parties. And those, of course, are the two primary ones that we've got. And if you start with them, I know when I ran first time last year, that was where I was getting most of my information from. And so if you can reach out to them at the outset, they can then pass that information to their candidates and maybe get ahead of the purchasing.
Yeah. And Terry, so if you go
that is a local.
If you go to the county election site, the heads of the Virginia Dems and the heads of the local Republican Party are all listed there. And so I know Teddy is very engaged in that. She's on our committee. But I think that's exactly, they did that outreach last fall. And you could actually talk to Teddy because she's going to know. I know a presentation was made to the parties to do that. So,
And I would also say state, just because local, we don't have any supervisors running this time. They will be in touch with whomever wins the, the primaries that are coming up for both parties, but it might be beneficial to not forget the state level parties.
So Terry, I have a question for you. Is it, what are you saying is the preferable, environmentally preferable material for signs?
So we've worked with Bailey Printing. There is a pressed cardboard. It's not as, they will tell you, it won't last for years, but because it's an election, it doesn't need to last for.
Right. Just a month or a couple weeks, really.
Right. So it's a pressed cardboard. I'm trying to kind of wade through the potential for greenwashing and talk to the people, but Fish and Bryce is who we're working with, and they have a line of products that we feel good about that are non-plastic products. So that's what we're recommending for our businesses.
Great, thank you.
Just going to raise my hand physically because people can see it. I'm not sure how to see people's raised hands virtually. So just one thing to bear in mind for this upcoming election is that election laws changed to allow in-person, no excuse voting for a 45-day period prior to the election. So that's mid-September. So if you're thinking about the life cycle of a yard sign, it should be significantly extended, I would think, from the perspective of people who are preparing to run for office.
They often start coming up in July. I was going to add that, the traditional September time is when most of them start coming up, but in reality, they start putting them up in July and August.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's definitely something. I know Teddy will be very interested in that. And Phil, I can help with some end markets for the polypropylene as needed. I know that Envision Plastics down in Reedsville, North Carolina, processes polypropylene, so we can reach out to them if needed. But there are a bunch of others as well. So
we only have one bale right now, so I think the sound choice is to see what we're going to start doing as far as further collections so that we can estimate quantities and timing and then figure out what we do with it then. Right now it's sitting undercover but outside, which I think should last for quite a few years.
like 1,000. Okay. All right, everybody. Thanks for that. So we're going to, I think, set a record precedent here of ending early. So let's adjourn the meeting.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.